crazy idea popped into my head. To paint a guitar with markers. Yep, the same regular markers you used in school. I found a suitable instrument, and got to work. First, I'm taking the guitar apart. Removed the pickups, cut out all the wires, unscrewed the hardware. Put everything aside neatly. Well, almost neatly. The main thing is to make sure nothing goes missing in the end. Now I'm sanding the surface. It's like a face scrub, but for wood. All the old stuff comes off, leaving a clean canvas. The key here is not to overdo it, otherwise I'd have to repaint it all over again. I wanted to work with what's already there. Drawing on a brand new guitar would feel like a waste, but this one was just perfect for the job. After all the work, I lightly blow the dust off the guitar, degrease it, wipe it dry, and finally take out the markers. So here it is, finally, the moment of truth. I've spent all this time preparing, disassembling, sanding, cleaning off the dust, and now I'm holding the markers in my hands. Just regular school markers, the same kind kids use to doodle in their notebooks or on desks. And I start drawing the very first lines on the surface of the guitar. Honestly, the idea of trying something like this has been sitting in my head for a long time. I've seen similar experiments done on old instruments, and it always felt to me like there was a kind of special magic in it. You know, when an object has already lived a bit, when it carries its own story, and then you add something new, something of your own. Of course, I'm not an artist. I don't have art school behind me or any special training. That's why I see this process more as a trial run, an experiment. I'm not trying to create a masterpiece or a museum exhibit right here and now. It's more like a first step, a chance to feel the process itself, to understand how the material, the colors, and the texture work together. In the future, on days, I'd love to turn this into a full project, to create a guitar that's a real art object, with a meaningful design, with a clear idea and composition. But for now, it's all pure improvisation. I'm just letting my hand guide the lines wherever they want to go. And to be honest, the feeling is pretty funny. I literally feel like a kid who's been handed markers for the first time and told, "Go ahead, draw on whatever you want." And here I am, sitting with this complete freedom, not knowing what the outcome will be. I'm sealing everything with lacquer. For this, I specifically chose polyacrylic. It's a more forgiving material, and if something suddenly goes wrong, it can be relatively easy to remove and redo. That makes it perfect for experiments like this, where the result isn't always predictable. Polyester, on the other hand, is a completely different story. If you make a mistake with that stuff, fixing it is almost impossible. Honestly, sometimes it's easier to just cut out a new guitar body than to sand all the way back down to bare wood through a polyester layer. That's why for projects like this, it's better to work with materials that allow for corrections. And polyacrylic fits that roll perfectly. At first, of course, the whole surface becomes shiny. The effect is very striking, almost like a brand new guitar straight out of the store. But I didn't want to leave it looking like a glossy mirror because the body itself isn't new and still has its small imperfections. So I knocked it down to a matte finish. It looks calmer that way, and the little flaws in the old body don't stand out. In the end, the result feels more balanced. The instrument looks refreshed, but it hasn't lost its original character. The assembly went fairly smoothly without any major issues, though I wouldn't call it completely effortless. The first step was installing the pickups, and that's where a little snag appeared. After applying the lacquer, the cavities had become just a bit tighter, and the parts simply didn't want to fit the way they were supposed to. I had to take a tool and carefully sand the spots down, just fractions of a millimeter, but without that, and everything would have sat crooked or not gone in at all. Once that was taken care of, the rest of the process flowed much easier. The hardware slipped back into place without resistance. The wires were neatly laid in, the screws tightened down. In general, a guitar isn't all that complicated. It's a pretty straightforward puzzle where every piece knows its place. The key is not to rush and not to mess up the sequence. Everything else comes together almost automatically. And then came the final step, stringing it up. So here it is, a spontaneous little project. Yesterday it was just a regular guitar, and today an art piece. To be honest, I'm not fully happy with how it turned out. Probably because I rushed it and drew everything on impulse. Next time, I'll definitely make it better. Still, I'm glad I gave it a shot. What do you think? Does this idea deserve a place in the world?